Hey, this is Jay.
And this is Chelsea.
Welcome to the Shifting Perceptions podcast.
We are bringing you inspiration to live a more creative lifestyle because our favorite people are the ones that choose the path less traveled. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of the Shifting Perceptions podcast. This is Chelsea Alders. This week we got to sit right here in our studio with fellow Jersey Shore natives Jeremy and Stephanie Puglisi. Jeremy and Stephanie have made a career of weekend warrior and extended vacation RV life, and it's a story that I, for one, related to really well, hearing that their original inspiration to get an RV and hit the road was created from just wanting to be out and moving again after having twins. It brings me back to those early days with 3 babies, scouring the internet for weekend destinations that we could drive to without everyone losing their minds. These two are humble and hilarious together, and seeing this business was spun from such a genuine place, as both were writers and adventurers at heart, they bring a bit of that old Emerson and Thoreau energy into a modern RV travel life. Their story is what any blog writer aims for. Blogs led to book deals, books led to podcasting, and eventually it all led to Steph leaving her job and running this amazing business. When you see how organically their business started, I think it will give you the nostalgia I know I felt when I first discovered RV Family Atlas, of just sitting by campfires and hitting the road. I know for me, it brought me back to the days of writing about my life just because it's fun to write. I hope you love every minute.
Hello, I love you. Won't you hit subscribe? If you guys haven't done so already, would you guys hit the subscribe button on your podcast player at this moment to make sure that you get the next episode stuck in your podcast forever? Ha ha ha. Just kidding. So guys, I'm an artist when I'm not podcasting, and I would love and appreciate your support in any way, whether that means buying a print or whether that means just popping over on my social media and saying hello. I love it all. My website's jalders.com. My social media, you can find me at jalders on every social media on the planet Earth, almost. Chelsea is a birth doula. As our children say, she's a baby helper. So if you or someone you know might be having a baby and want some resources or some help, you can go to mamasdoulas.com or find her on Instagram under the same name or at Chelsea Alders. We love hearing from you guys on our podcast feeds. You can find show notes, resources, and all kinds of good stuff on shiftingperceptionspodcast.com. And we also have a presence on all social medias as well. If you look up Shifting Perceptions Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you will find us. And one last thing, if you guys stay tuned until the end of the episode, you can hear our commentary as well as we fill you in on some of the absolute insanity that's been going on in our lives for the past week.
Let's jump in. Hi, guys.
Hey, Steph and Jeremy.
Hello. So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
We are huge fans of the podcast. I'm very excited.
Oh, my God.
I'm fanboying. I'm very excited to be here.
Samesies.
So we were just talking about trauma right before we got on here, and it leads us into how Jeremy and I met.
I did not know you were going to go there.
Why not, right? So we both go to the same gym. And there's these naked dudes around me in the locker room, and Jeremy comes up and introduces himself, and that's burned in my brain forever.
I was not naked.
You were not.
I need to clarify. And Jay was not naked either, but we were surrounded by nudity.
He tapped me on the shoulder.
Big thing in that gym.
Yeah, big thing.
Yeah.
But I think the relationship got off on the right foot there.
There's
a lot of
nice.
honesty here.
It took
I
away.
kind of picture it as like that movie scene when you see each other from across like a club, and it's like all the lights come down on the two of you, and you like come together in a
you
sea
move
of
towards each
naked
other.
6-year-old balls.
I was kind of hoping that you had not pictured it.
But it's like between both camera angles were all these silhouettes of sausage
Yes,
and whatnot.
just nude old men. Yeah.
So anyway, we got to know each other that way, and then we quickly kind of learned about each other, and you guys, we found out, are like the royalty of RV people. And I want to know all about that. I want to know, like, I don't know anything about RV life. And so I was trying to think before we got talking, like, where to go with this. And like, so I want to understand it. And I'm relating it to like the surfing world because I'm sort of more knowledgeable about that. And like in the surfing world, you have all these different types of people, right? You have like the cliche stoner surfer guy. And then there's like the blue collar surfer guy with tattoos. And then there's like the white collar guy that does it on weekends. There's all these different types, right? Yeah.
The born again Christian
So-
crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So until like when I met you guys, you kind of like really opened my eyes on what an RV family is, because you guys seem pretty normal. You've got a great house. I say seem in italics.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, you guys have beautiful 3 boys and everything's like, I always pictured RV families just like being on the road and like roughing it, but you guys seem to have a nice balance. And I want to know those different types of RV families and help me understand who does this.
Well, I think I can say a little bit about ours maybe and who does this and why we decided to do this originally. And it's funny because let's just go back to the trauma, right? You started us off on that.
Oh boy, where are you going?
But like, so let's just like hang out there for a second. So I think that Jeremy and I both felt like we really were a step behind the curve when we had our kids. Neither of us came from families that we wanted to replicate. And I think that sometimes at least one person in a marriage or in, a parenting relationship will say like, this is what my childhood looked like. And I really love that about my childhood and I want to go forward with it. And we did not have that. Neither of us wanted to raise our kids the way that we had been raised. And I think that we were really scrambling for what a family was going to look like for us in the first year of their life. I mean, we were desperate for that, right? And that, ironically, is what led us to buy a camper.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, having twins that were, 1-year-old baby boys, we felt so cooped up at home. And I think that we were actually just desperate to find a way to get out of the house and to get out into nature with the kids.
And not to like Chuck E. Cheese.
No, like really, Stephanie and I always had loved road trips. We had driven cross country together. We had gone to New Orleans together. So we wanted to do road trips. We wanted to travel. We wanted to do it with the boys. We wanted to start them young. And I don't know where we even really got the idea to buy a pop-up camper, but we did. We went out. We had no idea what we were doing 10 years ago.
Yeah, so it wasn't like we came at the RVing thing from like having
it wasn't very
this
intentional,
community.
I guess.
No, it wasn't. It was right. It was the very opposite of intentional, I think. Although if you flip it, like I know that I had grown up and I can count the number of times that I had ever really spent time one-on-one with either of my parents, right? Like it was not something that I thought about when I thought about my parents, like me and them interacting. And I know that
your dad
Jeremy,
worked 80 hours a week.
Right. My father just worked all the time and my mother was just keeping it all together at home. And you had the same kind of experience, but for a very different reason. Your father was a drinker.
I had gaps of 5 or 6 years of not even speaking to my father.
Right.
So I was desperate to be really connected with the boys.
I think that
and
was
to have quality time with them. And just this camping idea just seemed like it would sort of be the solution to all of our
like, let's all
parenting
get in a
anxieties.
camper.
and like ironically, it was. I mean, it really was pretty magical. And it, hasn't made us a perfect family by any stretch of the imagination, but we both feel like it's
us though.
It's
like,
defined us for a decade.
Yeah.
So that's the crazy part, I think, is that you almost picture, and this is just all those preconceived judgments, right? But you picture that you guys were just like living this nonstop travel lifestyle before you even had kids. Like that, it's so ingrained in you that it felt like it feels like it's been there forever. So that's the part that's shocking to me, that this was actually like, because trust me, I've been at that 1 year mark with twins where you're like, get me the F out of here. Like we've got to get on the road. We did our first trip and I remember feeling like finally, like we can do this again. But we traveled a lot up until then. And I don't think that throwing us on a camper was ever on our check of like it's so interesting to me that not having a history of it and then jumping into it is an interesting.
So in all honesty, my family did not do any travel when I was growing up, except for our family vacation every year was church camp.
Okay.
And then, but what would happen is we did have this tradition for a few years where a long weekend was spent with a few of our church family friends camping at Assateague Island in Maryland. And we sometimes, a few times, borrowed a pop-up camper from family friends. Yeah. Now the kids weren't allowed to sleep in that pop-up camper. Only my parents were. Oh, nice. We had to sleep in the 8-man army tent that my father would make us set up on our own, make or break us. He was all about creating like tough, tough girls. So we didn't, but I do think that in my head, I had a few moments of that family togetherness growing up, and they involved a pop-up camper.
Okay, well, so that makes sense.
There was a
you
connection
gravitated
there,
towards that. Yeah.
When I was 6 months old, my grandfather rented a Winnebago, and he took maybe 8 of us to Florida on an RV trip. Now, I don't remember that trip, right? I mean, an expert would tell you it would be impossible for me to remember that trip, but I feel like I remember that trip because everybody talked about it growing
Family
up.
lore, yeah.
And as a kid, I never went camping with my father. I never went camping with my grandfather, only because he was older. But he would say to me over and over, when you and Stephanie and my grandfather loved Stephanie, he'd say, when you guys get married, rent an RV and take your kids cross country in a Winnebago, because to my grandfather, a Winnebago was an RV.
Yeah.
And he'd say, you got to do that one time, take that cross country trip in an RV. And I think that did plant a little bit of a seed for an RV adventure being a fun thing. I didn't know we would turn it into a family business and a career, but there are some seeds there that
yeah, so you see where it came from. That's really interesting. Well, so you do that first trip, and then what ignited in you to be like, this needs to be, one, a thing we do all the time, but two, where was the first business step in all this stuff?
So it started as a family blog. Like, I think I remember saying, and it didn't start right away. So maybe 2 years after we had been camping a lot, I think I said, Stephanie, why don't we start a blog? Because we both like to write. We had both.
Do you want me to say, I remember starting the blog. Do you want me to tell?
I remember your first blog post. So, but we started it just for our friends and family to read. There was
wait, the fact that she's asking if you want her to tell, you have to tell now.
I want to say that this is, I can say this story now that I'm out of teaching. So I can kind of tell the story, but I have to, I was getting pretty bogged down in the testing that was going. I was a third grade teacher at a time when testing became a real focus, and third grade was the first testing year for kids in the public school system in New Jersey. Yeah. So my career became a lot about teaching kids how to take this test every year in the spring. And I think that it was crushing my soul a little bit. And for the week that we had to do all this testing for hours and hours, that is the week that I actually sat in the back of that classroom. Of course, I wasn't supposed to be doing this. So I can admit it now that I'm not teaching. But I sat in the back of the room and I started a blog spot.
Oh my
God.
And that first blog post had no photos. I mean, looking back at it now, it's very raw.
SEO was terrible, huh?
Yeah.
No SEO.
SEO.
I mean, but I think that what was kind of important in our journey is that there was zero intention initially of this becoming a business. It was really born out of enthusiasm and energy and just really, truly loving something. I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting something for it to be a business, but it really came from a very just genuine place, like somewhere deep in our souls to write about it and share it.
Yeah.
And we thought that aunts and uncles would read it and a handful of friends would read it. But then I think that we just started looking at some of the numbers on it and we're like, well, wait, 500 people read that blog post. Who are those people, right?
Yeah, people started comment. It's like, that's a weird thing. And this is, of course, before we weren't on social media at all. As teachers, we were very separate. And of course, this is, let's say, 2011, 2012 at this point. So this is before blogs really took off and became what somebody would think of as a business. We were just, I think it was, honestly, it sounds so cliche, but I think it was a real creative outlet for us. We were in the trenches of parenting at that point with 2 babies. And I think it made us feel alive. I think it gave us a little bit of a purpose, right? Like we'd have this big fun camping trip and then we'd be able to write about it.
Yeah, it's cool to relive it, right?
Yeah.
You get to go back through it.
Yeah. And I think for us as writers, as we always did feel like that made it more
Was it more
enjoyable.
Cathartic for you, or was it like, hey, maybe this will turn into something? Like, who were you writing to?
Who were we writing
Was
to?
it a journal? Was it a diary almost
I think it
for
was.
you?
I think it really was. I had always been a journaler. We had always been written poet. Jeremy and I were like, you know, as teenagers, we were in the we were going to the poetry readings every weekend.
I used to write poems for her.
Oh, we
It's
should have
been a
brought some.
Stephanie
That's
wrote,
what we could do.
I think she wrote one for me.
Were you guys like super goth?
We weren't goth. We were not
no.
goth.
I was very. I would have been put in that
I'm
like
more
hippie category.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
I sewed all my own clothes. As
I'm
a
more goth now
teenager.
that we have 3 kids.
I was very artsy, very crafty. So I think that I would have these moments where I would have these thoughts while we were camping, and I was having lots of those sort of little epiphanies about maybe becoming a mom, right? And becoming parents. And then we would write about it, and it just was a nice fit for us. And we did it for years with zero monetization.
Well, I think we were doing it for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jay, who do you paint for? You know,
Myself,
I'm sure there's an aspect to which you would paint if nobody ever saw the paintings.
It would probably be more enjoyable at times if
Yeah.
if I did that.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't, it's hard to replicate that, right? Like once you have monetized,
Once you
the
have something
process.
leaning on it, it's
Yeah.
hard to pull it away.
Yeah, like you guys couldn't just go back and be like, no one read this. We're going to write a little private journal entry over here.
sometimes I think about that. If we did stop doing this as a business, what would it look like then,
Yeah,
right?
which
Like
parts of it do I
sometimes-
love that much?
Yeah, sometimes I
Yeah.
want to kind of hit the reset
On
button
those
in my
days when
own-
Stephanie's thinking about burning the whole thing to the ground.
Yeah, which with
I
any
threaten
business,
to do
man.
every once in
Yes.
a while.
I think I did it
yeah.
about a couple, like 2 hours ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been like just busting our asses trying to, monetize everything that we're doing. That's and yesterday I made 9 cents in my AdSense account, which is pretty awesome. But just the amount of time and effort we're putting into it, I know it's going to work, but I'm just like, come on,
Yeah.
work. Did
Well,
you
it's
guys?
just such a game, right? Like you're
Yeah.
just putting together these puzzle pieces and like waiting for them all to streamline. And it's like you have to have one take off, and then maybe some other part of it is like not doing so great. And that it's like such an
and
interesting.
I think that's what we were talking about a little the other day. It's easy for us now in retrospect. So now looking back, we've been doing this as a business, not just a freelance side gig. But when I finally resigned my position as a teacher, it's been about 4.5 years now.
So let's clarify for everyone which
Sure.
parts of all of this are the business. So the blog, the book writing.
So we started
podcast.
blogging for other companies.
Right.
Okay.
The
A lot of
first
freelance
check
writing.
we ever got was freelancing, writing blog posts for other people.
Like guest
Okay.
blogging.
Like what kind
Guest
of companies?
blogging, like the RV companies,
Okay.
the campground
Progressive was
companies,
one of our
Progressive
first.
Insurance, and we went after some of them, and some of them found us.
Cool.
There were days where you opened up our inbox and there's an email from Progressive Insurance. You want to write about RVing for us. Cabela's, do you want to write about camping for us? So
cool.
it worked both ways. But initially, we were making money freelancing for other people, which is really a blessing and a curse because we did monetize very early, but then there were ways in which we neglected our own blog and our own
platforms,
website. But that was all, just to be honest, like the blogging was all kind of funny money. It wasn't real money. Blogging does not pay well.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a side hustle, but it was not
I think
a
it was our
career.
travel money.
It was a little bit of extra travel money.
It was probably the way that two teachers could afford to
Yeah.
camp as much as we did for a couple of years.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For us, it really became a monetized business when we started podcasting.
Okay.
We both had always listened to podcasts, and we both had always talked about starting one.
I
And
did podcasting in school.
Stephanie did
with my
podcasting in
kids,
school.
yeah.
And at the end of one of our summers, we said, we got to start the podcast now or we're never going to do it.
So that's pretty early into the podcast game if you were doing it with your students. And like that's like very early. Like I feel like just now people are starting to realize, even still to this day, like we had to like explain to our parents what a podcast was. So I mean, and our parents are pretty young and hip. Sorry,
Well,
Dad, I'm
yeah.
throwing
Yeah.
you.
Your
But-
dad's pretty hip.
But for them to not even know that this is
that,
like
at
a
least.
thing that you can do, I mean, this is new still. It's still a new business.
So I was a trained Apple educator.
Oh, okay.
So what I
That's
did
right,
I
was
had a neighbor that did that.
Apple
Okay.
came into the schools and they would train like a handful of the teachers at a
Yeah.
school
That was
to
a cool
be able
program.
to help. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I honestly probably would have stayed teaching much longer if I had been able to do more of that because it was inspiring, it was fun. And then I could bring it all into the classroom where I felt like I wasn't teaching kids. This is very important to me as a teacher, that I wasn't teaching kids how to use a program. I was teaching them how to create their own content
cool.
with technology.
Yeah.
And
Love
that
that.
just like lit me on fire as a teacher. Like, don't play a video game, create a video game, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how I was as a teacher.
and having your hands in the pot of like what's coming next is the big technologies of like
Yeah.
teaching these kids, this is what's it's gonna look like for you when you're out in the world.
I
Like,
loved
it's-
it. I taught that. So I always, no matter what we were doing, history, whatever it was, I would have them make their own podcasts in the classroom. And
cool.
they had so much fun doing it. And so I was
Little did they know she would quit her job one day.
I know. Like, thanks
So
for the
I-
info. Gotta go.
so I was really comfortable in the podcasting world. And I had actually, before podcasts started taking off, do you remember that course I took at Brookdale? I loved radio. I've always loved radio.
Yeah.
And I listened to This American Life probably when it was on episode 10.
So good.
And
so good.
there was just something about that audio storytelling that's always
Yeah.
captured me. I wanted to do it. I would have done great in radio. I think if I had just gone into that originally, that would have been fun for me
Your
as
passion.
a career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started RV Family Travel Atlas as
what
our
was the
podcast.
first?
That was the first podcast.
Okay.
Was it originally for monetization, or was it just another experiment?
We wanted to stand out. So at the time, blogging had gotten pretty flooded, right?
Yeah.
And we felt like over the few years, everybody had become a blogger. So here we were, and we were like, okay, well, think about how many articles we have to write to really make money,
Yeah.
right? We were like, what else can we do to kind of stand out from the noise? And our answer was podcasting, because we were like, well, everybody's a blogger, everybody's travel blogging, but nobody's podcasting.
Yeah.
So let's pivot.
And
we did.
There were a
Yeah.
lot of beautiful mistakes there because, well, we had built up an audience, right? So our blogging audience moved right to our podcast audience, which was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had been freelancing for about 3 years with a lot of major brands in the RV and camping space, we had sponsors that were sort of ready-made that we had been working with for 3 years, and they knew us and they trusted us and they liked our content. So because we did all that freelancing, I think that we had kind of an easier time getting big brands to sponsor the show
Yeah, we had
than a
people
lot
to
of other
pitch.
people.
Mhm.
And we didn't get our first sponsor till maybe 9 months to a year.
Right. We started in September, and I think our first sponsor came on in July. And we actually had a number for ourselves. We had done some research, and we felt like we could ask for a sponsorship at 1,000 downloads per episode.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of doing it, and then we were trying to
Working
grow
to
our
that.
audience.
And
right?
as soon as we hit 1,000, we went
we
after it.
did,
Yeah.
we pitched.
And
First
then,
call, here we
then
go.
it's like, and for your people out there listening to your podcast who are scrapping and side hustling, one of the most important things I could tell you is that, like, we don't ask brands for sponsorships. We don't ask Progressive for a sponsorship. We ask Mark at Progressive for a sponsorship.
Yeah.
And we don't ask Cabela's for a sponsorship. We ask Amanda at Cabela's for a sponsorship. So it's about people and relationships and trust. And the brand doesn't exist. It's not a thing. There's people that work there. And since we had established trust with those people, they were willing to take a shot on podcast sponsorship. I mean, they were willing to write checks on something that was kind of a journey into the unknown, not necessarily because they thought our podcast would be amazing, but because they trusted us and they knew us.
Yeah.
They all say our number one response that we get from all of our partners across the board is you're authentic. And I do believe you can't make that up.
Yeah.
You can't pass in the world of this niche content creation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pretend. People can smell it,
Right.
right? So the fact that people in these brands were like, they're the real deal. They have their finger on the pulse of what people are caring about in this space.
Yeah.
If they're in the podcasting sphere or if they're in the blogging sphere, like, we trust them to tell the story that needs to be told.
Yeah.
And it was because we were doing it ourselves. And I think we've always kept a very authentic voice in everything we've done. I think we're out there doing it, and we talk about the things we're doing. We don't try to fake it.
And that's applicable to the sponsors. So we never ask a company for a sponsorship unless we use the product ourselves. We love the product ourselves. We believe in the product. And, we've had companies ask to sponsor the podcast where we don't necessarily believe in their product or value their product. And we've turned down that money. And that's been a really huge part of our journey too, is like our audience knows that when we endorse a product, it's because we would buy it anyway.
Yeah, it
even
means
if there
something.
was no business relationship.
So, Jay, I take my sleep very seriously. You know that.
I know this.
Yes.
This is true. You don't mess with Chelsea's sleep.
And here's the thing is that I'm a birth doula. So it's actually kind of funny because
You don't get much sleep anyway.
I don't get any sleep. It's really kind of crazy. The game changer for me for getting back into a really good sleep cycle has been
Dun, dun, dun.
CBD oil, for
You
sure.
down with CBD?
So Jay did some due diligence and found a absolutely well-known, actually, right? And
Very
phenomenal
well-known
brand.
company that decided to actually partner with us, which we're excited about.
Super excited. And
Charlotte's Web.
what a better fit for our first full-time affiliate, right? Like full on.
We're both stoked. We've been using CBD for, I don't know, like half a year or a year.
Probably
long
coming
time.
up to a year, yeah. But it actually gets me like really back into the exact flow of sleep that I need.
And I use it to not be such a stressful husband, as you can tell. It does actually help, though. I have a lot of everyday stress from work and from being a dad, and I find that it does kind of take the edge off.
Yeah, so we've got some links and some codes for you guys.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in checking out Charlotte's Web CBD, you can go to jalders.com/CBD. That's going to get you 10% off everything except for the bulk and the original. And we have to say this, and I'm saying this in italics, that everything we've said has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and none of this is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure, or prevent any diseases. So we are not doctors. We don't play them on the podcast. Once again, that's jalders.com/CBD. Don't forget to use code ALDERS for 10% off. That's spelled ALDERS.
Well, I also wanted to talk a little about, because I think about this ever since having dinner with you guys, and then as I listen to other podcasts, I always think about it. But I remember you guys saying, like, sometimes you do have to make things that might not be so glamorous in the RV world, like, sound a little more glamorous. And, like, do you struggle with that sometimes? Like, we were talking about, like, toilets and whatever, and, like, there's certain things that it's like but I guess when you're in the RV space and you're listening for advice on things, those things do, I mean, they matter to people.
Love that stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, like, that side of it, people want to talk about their RV toilet.
Yeah.
And, like, that, I mean, that I think maybe did surprise us a little bit, how much people...
How embracing it was.
Yeah. Our podcast is not all the romance of travel.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about things breaking and the problems you can have and tire blowouts, and people want practical, actionable tips for dealing with just everyday life in an RV. So there's an aspect of the podcast that's like super, super down to earth.
Well, I think we've built that reputation in the industry. So some people come to us and they say, okay, look, we've got this person creating that like woo-woo inspirational content. You know, we've got tons of that. Would you guys create that beginner content?
Yeah.
We're kind of seen, I think, as a little bit like the teachers, you know, like we've brought our teaching career into the RV space.
Yeah. It's a natural fit.
Where we're not just, you know, I never wanted to be, this was something, probably this was a little different than how Jeremy felt about it, but I always wanted to be useful. I never wanted to be fabulous.
Yeah.
Like I
Jeremy
never
wants to be fabulous.
Jeremy wants to be fabulous.
I know it's not an option.
But don't you kind of think that more you
Jeremy
would like
wants
to be fabulous?
super.
I think that what we both realized is that useful is more enduring and long lasting than fabulous. And
that's a great quote.
People blow up on social media and they're fabulous, but you know, we're all not always 20 years old and beautiful or whatever.
I never wanted, oh gosh, becoming a mom in the age of social media and everything, I feel like it really impacted me. And I said, I never want to be that person that's out there saying, hey, go ahead, try to be me.
Yeah.
You know, like, look how beautiful I am. Look at how stylish I am. You're just going to look at my Instagram feed and think, oh, if only I could get myself together like that. I never wanted to be that person. I don't
if
ever
only
want
I
to
could
make
have that
anybody
toilet in my
feel-
RV.
Yeah.
It sounds, well, but
porcelain as opposed to the plastic.
it sounds exhausting though. Doesn't it?
It is exhausting.
You know, being useful is not exhausting.
You know what's interesting too is like, is there anything more humbling than being a twin mom? Like, I feel like that was like the number one thing that I was like, all the shit I thought. Because really, with my daughter, I was like, we are crushing.
You thought you were
it.
amazing, right?
Yes.
When you had one.
We are.
And you were.
Best parents on earth.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have these two at once, and it is like, I mean, I don't know if I can ever do anything right again. And then when you make it out alive, you're like, I have to just like help the world, because there's like people struggling, and I'd never felt that level of like exhaustion and struggle before.
Or you just celebrate survival.
Yes.
Right? It's not like you're not celebrating crushing it. You're
No.
just celebrating survival.
10
together.
minutes of quiet you're celebrating. Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
a different, I feel like there's a very interesting mentality, which by the way, that is like how we officially met. We did not meet
Twin
naked in a
moms.
Oh,
locker
right. I
room.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't in a locker room naked.
No, we were not. in
Oh,
a
I'm
naked
sorry,
room.
guys.
And I've never had that experience since. I don't know.
Something to look forward to.
I know.
Chelsea and I somehow have never been naked
It's
together
crazy.
in
I
the
know.
gym locker.
it would just be another trauma. You're not missing.
Yeah,
Bring out the
it's an
wine,
emotional trauma.
ladies. So can we parallel that, because I'm seeing a parallel with that in entrepreneurialism. Like we all have these like hopes and visions, and we have our first glimpse of that. So paralleling that with the first child experience, you have this vision of like your RV business and the blogging and the podcast and everything, and then you get it and you're like, yeah, we're crushing it. I'm going to quit my job. And then like the reality sets in, and like paralleling now with the twins and more children. When were the moments where you went from like, yes, we did it, to like, oh my God, we did it. Now we really have to hustle and survive.
I don't know if we've ever stopped to take a second to enjoy a yes, we did it moment.
So you're not good
We're
at
not
celebrating
good
it.
at that.
We're very bad at that, which maybe has helped us be successful.
Well, I think the reason why we're bad at that is because we haven't had a network of people helping us do that. I really do, not to get sob story-ish, but it is part of that same journey where we talked about early on. Like, when you don't have, I remember, I was just telling some friends this the other day, like, growing up, anytime I had a success, I consistently remember my father saying, oh, I knew you could do it, right? Everything was just like, yeah, no problem. Like, I begged somebody to come and to my family, begged somebody from my family to come to my graduation from the University of Pennsylvania, from graduate school.
Yeah.
I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I was graduating from UPenn, and I was
4.0, and Bono was speaking at graduation.
And I had to basically cry to get one of my parents to come to my graduation. Like, come on, just like somebody clap for me, you know?
Yeah.
And I do kind of feel like, because Jeremy and I both haven't had that bigger family structure around, like, celebrating and clapping for us, like, we just handed in our next book to our publisher, and that night, you know, it was 11 o'clock. We hit send on the final manuscript, you know, hundreds of pages that we wrote together. And I think we have a hard time. Like, we look at each other and it's just kind of like, what next?
Yeah.
Who needs
a bath?
Well, I have a different neuroses with that too. I just feel like taking a day to celebrate is letting somebody else catch up to you.
Isn't that suck? That's a sucky part of entrepreneurialism.
That's like something chasing you, right?
Really sad.
It is. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I think it fuels a lot of the competitiveness. It fuels the creativity. But when we started doing this, was it 7 or 8 years ago, there wasn't really competition. And, you know, now there is. And a lot of that's because people saw, oh, they're doing a monetized podcast in the RV and camping space, you know, and now there's some other ones. And so I constantly feel competitive. Like, I don't want to rest. I don't want to be satisfied. Oh, we turned in our second book. Okay, we got to sell our third. But
is there ever a time in the imaginary future where, like, oh, now I can rest?
Dear God, I hope so.
Like, is there a place that you see as a goal? Like, do you have a goal? Do you guys have goals in mind that you're like, if we hit this place?
We do. And I think that one of the things that has been a goal for us in the past year is that we try not to dwell on our mistakes, because every time we've pivoted, I really believe it's made the difference in our success. Like, everybody was blogging, we pivoted to a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We've done things that have been different. And so we can sit here and we can say, well, we don't have the perfect SEO'd blog that we could have had. We can go back and we can list all the coulda, shouldas. But the reason why a lot of those things went to the wayside was because we're really focused on what we're doing at the time, and we do it well. So I think, like, okay, I try not to get too caught up in that. But one of the things that I do try to remember is that when we handed in our first book, we got an agent immediately. Our editor at Penguin Random House said to us, "This is my favorite agent in the industry. She's great." We were handed to this agent who has decades of amazing experience. We had a great meeting with her. She loved us. She was ready to sell our books. And it took us 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years to get her.
We just even lost track of her
book proposal. So we just were so caught up in the making a business work, right? That we didn't stop to create our own content still in the book space. And when we finally, so last summer, we finally said we're finishing the book proposal. We got her the book proposal in August. We had a book contract by September. We just handed it in. So, you know, that I'll never let that happen again, right? That was a big, for me, learning curve. Like, we want a bookshelf of books.
Yeah. So what was the first book? Let's talk about that for everyone. So the
first one was The Idiot's Guide to RV Vacations.
So how did you guys get in with Idiot's Guide?
They emailed us.
Really?
We thought it was
that
spam.
Amazing?
I LinkedIn. I went onto LinkedIn to look at the editor. I was like,
these guys are calling us idiots.
And, you know, it wasn't, without getting into the muck of the details, it wasn't the dream book contract. But Stephanie and I both took that project on because we wanted the second book contract.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be able to write the exact books that we wanted to write as opposed to like a series book. And we took that project because we wanted to be able to get an agent and we wanted a career in publishing. And that really, to go back to Jay's question in terms of like, when would we be satisfied? When would we be happy? Like, I think we've both really determined we want a steady, consistent career in publishing books, and the podcast will always be part of that. And when I mean a steady, consistent career in publishing books, I mean something that is sturdier and more substantial than worrying about your social media numbers,
Right.
than worrying about your Instagram
stuff.
likes. And
Yeah.
like, I want a career that transcends that, so that you're not feeling like your entire life is being pulled back and forth by
Chasing
Facebook
an
and
algorithm,
Instagram and an
right?
algorithm. Like, I want book sales that make me not have to even think about all those things. That those are just like a small part of
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah.
Where it's so easy for them to be a huge part of what we do. And frankly, Stephanie helps me with this a lot, because I get overly worried about that day-to-day interaction with our audience on social media. And I think a publishing career is just a sturdier foundation for
Well,
us.
I always
And a
say
healthy-
to him,
a
like,
healthier one.
Healthier.
think about the difference in how we feel when we create that content that's there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so curated, and you have all these experts, like these people in the publishing world, they know what they're doing. And it's amazing how they help you and they support you. I was like, think about the difference between that and when you do a Facebook Live,
Yeah.
right? It's just so ephemeral.
I
Like,
know.
it just goes, and it's important. You have to definitely reach your audience where they're at. But success for me really is follow right now. And I mean, I think that I think we've spent enough time not doing it to know that when we write and when we produce really extensive, detailed, helpful information for people, we feel so good about what we do.
So I have to ask, like, so I think our biggest problem, both of us, between blogging, writing, all of it, is like having extensive periods of time to actually get into that state where you're like writing good content. With 3 kids, like, when are you guys doing
check
that?
into hotel
it
rooms.
doesn't happen. No, and that's what
I'm
I
not
would,
even
I have
kidding.
to. I would have to. I think that's like where we're at right now. It's
Ste-
like we need to like check out
To
do
finish
it.
our book proposal, which we were hell-bent last summer to finish this book proposal, I believe that 2 different times Stephanie checked into hotel rooms. And it was one
it's
time.
the cost of doing business. Think
Yeah.
about
It
that.
was
I
3...
thought you were so against hotels. I love that you love hotels.
That's a great point. I
Different
never thought of
one.
that.
No, if I don't have
can't go out
kids
on your
with me,
RV.
I'm
Because we were
fine.
just on this is like a super random tangent, but we were in New England like a month ago, and I was like, you know, like this RV thing sounds cool, but
You're
I
on our
love
minds all the time.
hotels. Like I'm just like a hotel guy.
You can have both. You can have both.
You can have
Yes.
both, yeah.
And we have, and our kids, just so you know, now we do a lot of travel now with our kids that obviously we wouldn't drive our personal RV to go to Texas
Yeah.
for 5 days.
Well, that's not
or-
obvious. I think people are interested in that because that
Okay.
is kind of a lifestyle for some RVers where they sell everything and they're just doing
Right,
that.
so
That's
some
what,
are
that's what I
full-time.
thought
Yeah.
it was, really. So the people that I know on my peripheral are people that like quit their jobs and sold their house, and like there's
They
a
are
couple
big.
we know in Bradley Beach that just did that. They just are traveling now.
So here's the irony, and this is an interesting insight into our industry. That's about 1% of RV owners that
Wow,
live in their
really?
RVs.
That's really
but
funny.
that 1% of RV owners probably create 99% of the content on camping and RVing.
So that
Yeah.
goes back to my original question: is like, who is the rest of it? Because to me,
That's
that
the
was
space,
that was
yeah.
everyone. I thought like,
Well, that's the space we stepped into, because when we started, we saw all the content being created by retired people living in their RVs, and then families
Or
who were kind of
families,
making that
full-timers,
dramatic
yeah.
move to sell
Yeah.
it all and move into their RVs, which is great. I follow all those people too. But that wasn't us. We wanted our
I
house.
love my house.
We love
Yeah.
our neighborhood.
I know, I'm a house person.
we
I
love
know.
our
it.
neighbors.
So more
refreshing.
like weekend warriors is what we're
Weekend
looking
warriors,
for,
summer
yeah.
vacations, and there was no content for us. You know, and like so many things, to use the Gandhi quote, you know, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
The content didn't exist, and we were like, okay, let's create that content.
Yeah, and we did. That's our podcast specifically was geared to step into the recreational
Okay.
portion of this,
It's
right?
the escape. It's the
Yeah.
dream. It's the getaway. It's the yin
Yeah.
and the yang of home and away, not just the extreme of
More of the road tripper
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Which
And-
really is us, but we're just like in our minivan and then stay in hotels instead of
Right.
taking the choice of like flying somewhere and getting an RV. When
and
you
we
get there.
had difficult kids, I'll say. I love my kids, but come on. They were not easy, like in hotels.
Yeah.
And
3
so-
boys in general.
They were not easy on the hotels.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole thing was always so stressful for us.
Okay.
They were always early to bed and very early to rise.
Okay.
So we felt like we were constantly bucking against everywhere we were, right? In a hotel, like the noise and your kids would be waking up. Like they were not easy. Our third is much more easygoing, but our twins weren't. And it was, when we tried hotels a couple times, it was incredibly difficult for us, which really drove us into the more of that pop-up camper space. We thought we need to have our own space.
So what you were going to start talking about is you were like, we're not the people to drive our camper all the way to Texas. So what do those trips look like for you guys?
One of the things that I really realize now, like 10 years into this, is I'm so blessed that I just feel so blessed that we did it the way we did it, and we trained these little road warriors for the first part of their life, because I feel like then when we were ready to step into the space where I was like, I'm ready to start traveling a little further than we can drive within, like, I'm not going to drive my RV to Texas to spend 3 or 4 days there and then drive all the way back home. Like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm not anti-plane, and I'm not anti other forms of staying, but by the time we put our kids on a plane for the first time, our older two were like 6 or 7, and the younger guy was like 3. They were such seasoned travelers that a plane ride was like a blink for them. Everybody was so good. There was none of those stories that you hear, about people flying with kids, because they could carry their own luggage. They were like, they were going through the system. They love it so much. So we've stepped into another stage in our family life where now we still believe that the campground is the best place for our family. So we fly places, and we stay in cabins or yurts or glamping tents.
Or we fly and rent an RV.
Yeah.
So we've done that too, because like we didn't want to wait to go to the Pacific Northwest, and we weren't going to drive 60 hours to get there.
Across country with my kids in the car.
So we flew and stay at campgrounds.
So what percentage of your travels mentally are you actually there? Are you at your travels thinking, oh, this is a good angle for this, and this is a good blog comment? Like how much of it are you actually like, yeah, this is fun? Go.
Stephanie's constantly in the moment, and I'm constantly ripping her out of the moment, trying to create content and take photos. And she's been trying to help me get better at that, because I show up at a location and I'm like, blog post, photo, content. Right. But the thing is, I enjoy that.
Writer.
But that's
Think
something
about
you enjoy.
writing before social media, before blogs, right? I am that old school writer where writing is really a form of reflection. Yeah. Right? Like, so I
live your life first.
Yes, absolutely. And I've always been that kind of writer. I do the whole thing, and while I'm doing it, like, my mind's kind of turning.
That's how I am. Yeah.
I find my spots, like, where I think about it and I store it away, and I'm like, I'm going to talk about
for
this
later.
Yeah. And then in the quiet reflection afterwards, I get my point, right?
Can I be a nerd and quote William Wordsworth, the English poet?
Yes, please.
Emotion recollected in tranquility. Yeah. That's the idea, is that you, after it's all occurred, you sit down and you emotionally and intellectually figure out what it all meant. And I think that's one of the reasons
and you're like a stream of consciousness.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons you kind of can hate social media, because it's almost so in the moment that it's hard to really figure out what it all means or what the value is.
Oh, it's soul sucking for me, because I feel like it's all just a constant, and it's never that, thoughtful. Like, for me, it's hard for me to be thoughtful on social media, and you just dive right in, Jeremy. And so that's a challenge for us.
It's also a yin and yang thing, so that's okay.
I think that's a very common thing. I mean, I know for me, like, a lot of my audience are like very, laid back surfer people that are, into that, lifestyle, which I love on paper, but realistically, I don't tap into that place that I'm feeding the inspiration to nearly enough. And I know very well-known, internationally famous musicians that their audience are all like wearing tie-dyes and tripping out and like, yeah, you're this, in the moment. And a lot of those, not all, but a lot of those musicians are very much like high-strung, sober most of the time, very business oriented. And I could think of any number of industries that I know people in where like their audience is doing the thing that you are serving creativity and inspiration to. And the people that are at the center of that, feeding it outwards, are like not like that at all. Not necessarily by choice, but just when you're leaning your business on it, it's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to think about our trips differently, right? Like, we have to think about how we can use our trips to serve the people who are truly just going to be camping for fun.
Yes.
And we have to kind of
But it's your life.
Like, content. It's your life. Yeah, it really is about crafting content all the time.
So that had to be a big shift for you guys, because you went from sort of like embracing and writing about your exact experience, and then had to shift into like, our experience is now like, you're not going to live a life, do a podcast, write a blog. Like, you're not actually telling people about that part of your experience anymore. Now it's
we went into different directions with that. So when we first started doing some more freelance writing for magazine publications, we had the experience of going to some locations and feeling like we had to do everything in that location because you're writing a magazine article.
And do it fast.
Yeah. And I think that we did that a few times and we said, whoa, this isn't the joy for us.
This is too much.
So one of the reasons why we loved what we did so much is because we found a way to do it that was so joyful for our family. And as soon as we tried to do it another way, you know, going from one thing to the next, we were just like, doing so many activities and eating at different restaurants to review them.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, one of the great parts about camping is that we could have dinner around the picnic table with our family
and totally disconnect,
and this
which
is
literally
why
is the biggest part.
This is why we love podcasting, though, because for years people have said, well, why don't you do a YouTube channel and do videos of your family on vacation? Or you know, on a road trip. And Stephanie, we've always really resisted that because you're filming in the moment of being on the trip in vacation. And in so many ways, it seems like such a violation of this sacred family space when you're traveling. And podcasting, it's all after the fact. You know, we go on this trip and then a week later, okay, well, let's organize our thoughts about it. So we're like the talk show hosts more than we are like, let's make our family a YouTube channel, which people have had great success with that.
I don't want to be a reality star.
And we don't want the kids to have to be characters in our content any more than they want to be, I guess.
Well, that's like my obsession with like the bucket list family, and like on paper, like I want to be them. But then at the same time, I'm like, every single thing they do is like he does an end of the week full on video thing that's like 10 minutes long. So like he's literally cut together every activity they've done. I'm like, that means that he was like full on trying to get the perfect angle of like every single, and it gives me heart palpitations to think about having to do that with 3 kids. Like I
think that you are correct to have heart palpitations.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a massive dark side to turning your life and your family into content. And we have this conversation every day about how to balance that and keep it real
early
for
on.
us.
And we can talk about that for a minute because you probably have a lot of listeners who do generate content right from their creative space and their family,
or trying to learn like how much of it you should be doing and like all of that, which is the hard part.
Or people that have a passion or interest and want to make a living at it. And I think it's important they hear this side of it. Like before you jump into that, which is a great thing to do, realize that you're going to be spending a lot of time not doing the thing you actually love doing.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And you have to make hard choices about your family if you do have kids like we do. Mm-hmm. And very early on, I said, I want my kids to be able to listen to every episode of our podcast and to not be horrified or embarrassed by anything that I say about them.
Yeah.
That was super important to me for me not to be giving away their secrets.
Yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, things can happen in the sanctity of a family, and it's really important that I wasn't exploiting that for our audience. So we, you know, that was hard because what do people want more than to hear like
the dirty,
the ugly underbelly, right? And I was just like, look, if my kid, when he's 12, would be embarrassed by that story, I just can't tell it.
It's also about knowing your kids, and it's not just about us making hard decisions. Like, we have to involve our kids in decisions. Like, I am constantly asking them, hey, do you guys want to be in this video? And I'm showing them, I think, just some basic respect and dignity, even though they're 5 and 9 years old. Like, if they don't want to be in a video, then I'm not going to put them in a video.
So that brings
that's
up a good
super important
topic
to me
too. Do you have like, you guys have a legit fan base now, people who have followed your family so do you have people that like have seen your kids grow up, and if your kids suddenly decide they don't want to be in this stuff, is that a big deal? Like, is this a big part of the business side of it?
That's such a good question.
I think that we've been pretty protective of them.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, so that even if people might think they've watched them grow up, in a lot of ways, if you asked them, what do you know about these
kept it
three
pretty sacred.
kids, they'd probably have a hard time. They know maybe that they like baseball, or it's very
but
generic.
That's again this conflict. I don't know if conflict's the right word, but just something that we're constantly working through is what is it that we do in terms of content creators. And we really personally have chosen to be like, it's Stephanie and Jeremy, the podcast hosts and the authors, more than it is like our family is the product, even though that certainly does come into it. And I don't want to get overly negative on social media and YouTube and all those things, because they've given us so many of our opportunities. I mean, we wouldn't have a second book contract if we didn't have a big Instagram following, to be honest with you. I mean, it matters so much, but it's a constant back and forth of conversation between you and I, how we balance all those things. And any content creator who's got the kids involved, it's I think you have to constantly be talking through it.
So I've told my kids, like, okay, so how in the previous generation, you might have the boss come to dinner, right? Maybe when we were little, like, the boss is coming to dinner and we expect you to behave and to sit nicely at the table and not embarrass our family and everything. Yeah. Or in a previous generation, it might have been the child that was expected to help out with the family business after school, right? And to come in and to do. So I think a lot of those expectations are really great for kids, right? It's not good
except
for us.
For our family, it's, hey kid, you have to be in a television commercial.
Right. So every once in a while, and we make those decisions not on the regular, right? Like those decisions they're not constantly involved on a weekly basis in our business. But then
so it doesn't feel like exploitation. It feels like they're going to have fun doing this. I'm sure they're still having fun doing that stuff.
Yeah, there's been times we've been asked to go to an RV show and do maybe an appearance there, and our kids are going to be with us because that's our life and our kids are there. And we've said to them, okay, this is a professional environment. This is mommy and daddy's job. This is how you're expected to behave. And they do a really amazing job at that. I mean, they have those moments where they step up to the plate and they help us do our job, right? Because we're all in this together. They get their baseball paid for because we have a business,
There's also larger projects we have paid our children to be in, and I have zero problem saying that.
That's cool. Yeah.
I mean, we were in the television commercial for the RV industry this year, and Stephanie and I were paid handsomely to be in this commercial, and our kids had to work for 2 straight days too, so we paid them accordingly. I mean, I teach a film class in my other life, and we study this child star named Jackie Coogan, who made tons of money as a little kid, and then he didn't get any of it. Yeah. And all the child labor laws they're called the Jackie Coogan laws in California. So I'm always thinking, like, am I being ethical with the use of my children?
Jackie Coogan and my kids.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the kids know they don't have to come on the podcast. Right. They choose not to, but we've had an open invitation to them if they want to. First of all, they'll have to do a good job, right? This is like our business. You don't just get to hop on the mic and whatever.
Oh, well, our kids did this week. Yeah. You'll hear our outro is them trying to say holotropic breathwork like 10 times. It's like holotropic.
Oh, I want to hear this.
They tried.
Well, our kids have never really wanted to do that. Yeah. And that's fine with us. And we're like, you don't have to. But if you do, we tell them that we'll pay them
I
to be on the podcast.
Do I have to pay them for that?
I hope one day our kids actually want to be involved in the content creation. Yeah. And it is sort of the family business, Theo and it is their summer job.
Theo says he does. He says when they're always talking about summer jobs and everything, our kids, that's the thing that I do like about what we do is our kids are highly aware of how money comes into the family.
I love that. Yes, ours are too.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I'm
you don't
setting
feel like
them
it just
up
appears,
for success.
and so they can just do whatever they want. Like summer right now is like, well, what if I don't do swimming? Can I do ballet instead? Like it's like, where's the money going? And I love that we've put it in her that she's like that smart that she can sort that out. Well, because I feel like this is an important topic because when I see some of your photos or like even your advertisements or things that are out there, the thing that gravitates me towards those is the kids. Because you're like, she's a twin mom, of course. And then you have 3 boys, which like the boy mom thing is a whole nother realm. Yeah. And I feel like that has to be a big part of your brand. Like pulling people in and being like, so do you get a lot of people saying, I want more content about being parents on the road? Like, do you feel like that's a push?
Yeah, there's absolutely a desire. Look, there's a desire for very personal content. Mm-hmm. And very personal content does really, really well. And it can be a struggle for us, because sometimes we want to share things and other times we don't. Yeah. And I think people that share everything, I mean, social media is very rewarding to that in terms of it being entertaining. People want to look into your private lives. And And that's what's compelling to them. So I don't have the answer for how to balance that. I just know that we both really think a lot about it and try and be honorable about it.
So maybe that comes back down to your like wanting to be fabulous, but you guys are actually like, let's avoid that and be in for the long haul. Like I actually feel like you guys have a really good way of seeing the big picture. So that's probably why you've lasted so long and like been able to plug forward and pivot. Because instead of just being like, today we're going to get so many likes, you're actually seeing the big story you're writing. You're actually writing a story the whole time.
Yeah, I would like my brand to transcend my 5-year-old's cuteness.
Yeah.
Right? Because he is super adorable.
You just got quoted, by the way. That's a very good quote.
I mean, he's super adorable. Our kids have always had a little bit of that really camera ready.
Oh my, totally.
Way.
The
They are.
curls
Right,
alone.
right, exactly. They have the blonde curls.
Little
okay.
Abercrombie models.
Right. They made it very easy for us. But I think I do want to say really clearly that
With great Paw
they
Patrol
are
toys,
never,
I must say.
yes. Thank goodness for Grandma to bring those plastic Paw Patrol toys over. But we allow them the choice. That's our biggest thing. So hopefully, as they get older, our older two have become a little bit more, I feel like, cooperative with things. Like if we're like,
oh, they get it.
Now
like,
they get it.
Like they want a new baseball bat. You know, we got to go out and earn money doing this stuff.
Right. Oh, don't you? So if I go to a birth and someone will be like, "How much money did they pay you?"
Yeah.
And
Our
she'll be like,
boys-
"Can we go to Australia?" This is what she's been asking. How much is the ticket to Australia? I'm like $1,000.
So this is the
Oh,
thing
you made
about
enough for us
kids,
to go to
I guess, of
Australia.
entrepreneurs is that my kids are constantly asking me how much we make
is that
for
enough
everything.
for this?
And I'm very careful because you know how kids talk about
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
So I'm always keeping information from them because I don't feel like they're quite old enough.
They're gonna walk out to their
So,
friends and be like, "Guess what? My mom made." Da, da, da.
Yeah, but I like the fact that it's there. I love the fact that they're connected with how much work we do. They know that we don't get paid. My kids will tell you this. We don't get paid to camp.
yeah.
They know that we're not getting paid because we're going to the campground. We're getting paid because we're putting in those hours in the basement.
Well, somebody on our
studio.
block said to one of my sons, "Oh, your dad has the best job in the world. He gets paid to go camping." And my boys were like, "Well, no, he doesn't." You know, that's not. But Chelsea, your question is such an important one to me right now. Like, it's about longevity and about building a lasting brand. I don't want this to just be for this brief window of time while my kids are cute and attractive. Like Stephanie said, you put it perfectly. I mean, Stephanie and I kind of have decided like we want to be doing this into our 60s.
Yeah.
You know, we love it, and that's going to change a lot over time. So it can't be based on youth or looks or so many of these other things that really can pop in a lot of ways on social media. But that's where it goes back to being useful and building content that people really need in their lives.
Is there a version of your future, or do you kind of fantasize about a version of your future where the monetary stresses are pulled away, you're like a bazillionaire, and are there certain portions of what you're doing that you would love to just explore? Like if you could just write, like let's say you said, "I love writing."
Mm-hmm.
Is there a version of Stephanie that's just a novelist, or would it always be RV stuff, or how would it look without the money thing?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Jay. Because I mean, it's, you know, as what we do, we're very much focused on the joy of RVing in our business side of things. But obviously, personally, we've built a business, right? So we're in the business, we're doing the books, we're making the money, we're writing the contracts. And there's a piece of me, and I actually sank into a pretty serious depression about 2 years into our business because I was grinding out probably 80, would you say 80 hours of work, 100 hours
totally.
of work
We're
a
there
week
now. Yeah.
in my house, right? Like all alone. I felt very alone. It was so different than anything I had ever done in my life. And I think it took me a while to be able to say to him, this is never what I dreamed of. Like he kind of felt like, you're living the dream, right? You quit your teaching job. You have a business of content creation. Like you're living the dream. What's the problem, lady? You know, buck up. And
I never call her lady.
and
Toots.
it was
Yeah, exactly.
fun. And I the problem was that, you know, if I closed my eyes, I wasn't a salesperson, right? When I was dreaming about what I was in life, it wasn't sales. And so much of what I was doing was sales. It has to be, you have to pay the bills. And really my ultimate dream when I close my eyes and I picture myself is really in that like writing shack, right? Like just me and my computer and writing. And that's why I say we really tried to hold on tight to each other this time around with this book deal and say like, never again. We want a bookshelf of books.
What would you be writing about in this future version of
Not
yourself?
only RVing.
What would you be, like a smutty novelist, or what would it be?
Stephanie did start a romance novel.
Oh.
I have like 160 pages of romance.
Stephanie just put her finger on the pulse of something. That like the modern content creator, it's so different for people in our day and age to create content than our fathers and our grandfathers and grandmothers and mothers who created content years ago, because we have to create it, then sell it, then distribute it. You know, I think that part of us...
And then it needs to go to Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook.
And I think that this part of us, we want to be like writers from the 1950s that just ship our book off.
I do too. Yeah.
Oh my God, people weren't worried about...
Chelsea's fantasy.
That's totally my fantasy.
I mean, I want to just be a painter, you know? And like, I think that's that's some of the motivation of like doing the podcast. I've been working on a book. Like I'm trying to put enough seeds out there with stuff that I also genuinely love so I can get my painting back. Not that I'm not painting what I want to, but I want to be able to paint without having to think. I don't give a crap about this commercialization, I don't care if people buy it or not. I want to get to that place again. You know what I mean?
So doesn't that, and I wonder if you can relate to this, because I feel like Jay has a side to him though that once he dives into learning, right now the big one is Pinterest, as we were texting about. His personality, it's almost like he's getting enough reward that he feels like he likes it at first, because he's like, I'm learning something new, I'm diving in, and then suddenly 40 hours goes by and he's like, I hate this. I hate it so much, but he's like trying to learn it.
That's probably what put me into the spiral after about 2 years in the business, is because I am actually an avid learner and I'm a doer, right? So I get that, what do you call it? What's the serotonin like? Buzz
psychosis.
Or whatever whatever it is.
I think it is called psychosis.
I get that little release of the drug when
when
I figure out
oxytocin.
Like I bought this.
Oxytocin, that's what it was. So
like I bought this stupid mixer. I'm like, I'm going to become a sound engineer in my spare time.
Yes, and that's what would happen.
And tomorrow it's like, damn it, I want to be painting.
I bootstrapped every part of our business. So for instance, when we were first asked for our very first SOW, like we were making an arrangement with a marketing director on the phone and they said, okay, just send us over an SOW.
What's that?
I had to Google.
Scope of work, like your contract, your agreement.
Yes, an SOW, of course.
Yeah. Which is always, I have
that's
done
what we
that.
said.
And I'm like, okay, no problem. And then I get off the phone and I'm like Googling, what is an SOW?
And
then, okay, now that I know that it's a scope of work or a statement of work, now I'm
What's
going.
a scope of work?
Now and then I'd be like,
then what are we going to do?
Messaging my friends maybe in marketing, and I'd be like, what does this look like? Finding a template. And because I am such a pleaser, right? Because I wanted success from day one. I wanted that 4.0. I wanted approval so badly, and because I was always trying to be that A student, I've done that with our business, and I was always striving to learn how to do the website but the bottom line is I hated all that stuff.
So
but
I
feel
like
I
you
liked
like
it because I was successful at it. So it gave me that buzz. So I built our website and I was so proud of myself for that. So then I thought I could build websites. Right? Or the podcasting. I fell down that rabbit hole too. And that has been a big part. And I think that I kept doing that and I hit a wall in our business. And it was like, really, none of this reflects what I actually love to do, which is in my heart of hearts, I'm a writer.
So how did you fix that? Tell me what happened next.
Such a way out of it, though, which we struggle with, and I know you guys are struggling with. It's hard to give up control and hire a team. And it's not like we have a team necessarily. It's expensive.
But we have a good
but we
team,
are starting to
say,
develop a team around Stephanie that is definitely doing a lot, helping her produce a lot of this content. And for all the content creators out there, I can't stress enough, you give up that money, you pay people to help, and you make the money back with the time that you gain yourself as
doing
a content
the thing
creator.
you like.
And you make the money back 3 times, 4 times what you're spending on getting someone else to help you.
So
it's just hard to do.
You hear that?
It is honestly very expensive. Like you could find people in the Philippines for like $5 an hour.
My team, I have to say, and people have told us that over the years, and my team is fully based on people that we have known and grown relationships with in the United States. Not that I'm against anybody, like somebody in the Philippines, like I want them to eat too, you know? So I'm not really against that, but it's been very important to me to find people who are
understand the brand.
Strong fit with our brand. And so it's gone slow and steady for us that way.
Finding the right people.
Absolutely. So I have one person that does all of my social media for me now, and I just add on one thing at a time and say, okay, now can we try this? And then I have another person who's doing a lot of my writing for me in terms of the sort of the dregs of the weekly content creation, so that we've been able to focus more on our larger writing projects.
But that couldn't have happened right away? Like, what monetary point did you get to where you're like, okay, it makes sense now to spend $50, $100, $200?
I would say, I'll tell you what, it was my teaching salary.
Okay.
You know, like I think for me, I was very much always trying to like when you quit a job, that's your baseline.
Okay. So as soon as you're making enough that was already covering the job, you left. Yeah.
When I started to feel like this is my teaching salary, beyond that, the business is building.
Right.
Because that's what we were living on to begin with.
Is that advice you would give to someone listening? Like to do it yourself?
Boring.
Bootstrap
that seems like boring advice, right?
But it's logical, right?
I think that it fits into a place in people's brains. I don't think it's boring. I think it's like,
bootstrap until you're making enough money to...
Yeah.
We bootstrapped everything.
You have to invest in yourself, though.
And then we invested. Our first major investment was on our website. And we used our tax return to do that. We literally took the money, said, how much is this?
Yeah.
And we want to build a website with this money. You know, it was like we've always done that. We don't have good entrepreneurial bones probably that way. We've always been very cautious with money. And we've bootstrapped the whole thing. We've never gone into debt for the business.
You've also done a great job of separating, this is our business's money and this is our family budget, and they're two different things, and not letting them all swim together. You know, for the entrepreneur running a small business at home, it can all get so jumbled.
It gets very jumbled very quickly. Yeah.
Like my next team member that I would like to hire in this vein that we're talking about is a bookkeeper, because again,
you don't have a bookkeeper. That was like our first one.
That's the only one.
Because you start to see the drain, right?
Yeah.
That's good to know. No, but you start to see the areas,
and he listens to this podcast, so he's
suck
like
the joy out of your life, right?
Yes,
and
it's horrible.
Again, could I do it? Yes. I happen to have like the problem of being able to figure out almost everything.
Yeah.
So that sends me into the direction that I should be doing.
Right. I find a sick pleasure in like tutorials and like spending hours on YouTube and like learning everything. And it's definitely a curse.
I told my web designer a couple years ago when we finally hired him, I said, I don't want to learn anything new.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of learning new
configuring
things.
plugins.
And don't let me get involved in this. That's the big problem, is like, don't let me get I don't want to get involved. I mean, I had to fully teach myself websites, and I felt like that was like such an achievement. Mm-hmm. And then I'll have people be like, can you help me with mine? And I'm like, no, hell no. I'm never doing that again.
That's what I feel about all of this podcasting equipment. I figured it all out, and then I put that baby to bed.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And my setup right now is fine.
Yeah.
It serves
We're done
us.
here. Yeah.
I've moved on.
Yeah.
I don't even remember anything that I learned from that research phase, you know?
Right.
So
it's like you had a breakup and I never want to think about it again.
I do. I want to embrace more of the creativity and not less. I feel like for a while
we want
when
that
you're building,
feeling of turning in books.
Yeah.
You know, that to
it
us
sounds like
is a
the
great
writing.
feeling.
I don't think I knew that about you guys, that the writing side of it was really the big.
Yeah. What's stopping you guys from just saying we're going to spend 15 minutes this week writing a novel or whatever?
So that's where we're at right now. So we actually we turned in our book. We have second edits that are due right now on April 22nd. Our editor said that we were dream authors, which was really nice.
That's very fulfilling.
We have the dream editor who took her kids on their first RV trip this past summer. So it's like we have a match made in heaven with our editor.
They loved our book. They were like, the edits are really light. And so it was very successful. We just are coming off of a very successful run at that book.
Good.
Like, so it's almost like, okay, the first book wasn't a glitch, right? Okay, we can do this. We can write books.
Yeah.
And so our second edits are due late April, and we already have our game plan in place. Like, we've given ourselves a timeline for the next pitch. They have first right of refusal, and then we have sort of a schedule that we would follow.
It's also important to say, like, the podcast is fully monetized. Our advertising spaces are sold out. That's up and running. It's supporting our family. It's paying our mortgage.
Yeah.
You
set up stability first. So.
Yeah, that's our stability. That's the rock of our business. And now, since we have that, we can move maybe a step more into the direction of our dreams.
Yeah, I don't know that I had it in me ever to quit my job on like spec.
Yeah.
You know, to be like, oh, I'm going to write and sell a book. Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I find that very courageous. I just have never, I grew up with a lot of financial insecurity and I crave financial security. Yeah. So I attribute everything to a bill. Right? Like, what does this pay?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think before, and this is a big one, like before kids, I thought that was courageous and like cool and like, oh, you hear these stories. Now that I have kids, I feel like it's irresponsible. Sorry.
It feels selfish.
Yeah, it's just not something that would make me happy or feel good.
Because then you just feel so unstable that you can't create.
We should say in this world that we're in right now, content creation, free product is a big form of payment for brands, right? So brands love to throw free product at you. And you can really get sucked into that and thinking that that is sort of a value for your time, right? Like, oh, they're going to send me this free camera and I just need to take some pictures of blah, blah, blah. But early on, I said to Jeremy, you know, free, I can curse, right? Free shit. We don't curse on our podcast. I said to him, I said, free shit doesn't pay the orthodontic bill.
I know.
I got so excited when Chelsea cursed before. I was like, oh my God, we're on a cool podcast.
We check explicit.
So people listen to, so people listen to our podcast with their kids in the car, which we love.
Guys.
And so we've been very...
I probably do too, but they just go for it.
Well, the free shit ends up being just a pile of crap in your garage.
It's
nothing that exciting.
I'll have some stuff.
Come on over,
please.
man.
I tell them.
Do you want to go see our garage? I mean, really, like we do. We have gotten an amazing brands. We're grateful. But how many like shark whatever bands?
Oh, come on. They were really cool.
Yeah, they were really cool. This is what Jeremy does
cool.
too.
But I can only wear one in my lifetime, so I don't need.
You could put
15.
one on each wrist and one each on the ankle.
Yes.
And...
we
got a little visitor. Hey, Judah.
Hi.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Grayson.
Okay, I'll fix it. I love you. So anything else before you want to wrap up?
Hey, guys. Okay.
Oh,
well, yeah, I guess we can wrap up. So you want to...
So I think the most important thing is let's talk about the titles of the books. We have Idiot's Guide to RVing. Is that it? Where they can find you?
Do you want us to...
No, keep talking. Yeah. They're good. Okay. All right, pause. I'll be out. Give me 5 minutes. Yes.
How about 2 minutes?
Go get a muffin.
Little post-production here needed.
You already ate a muffin? What about a banana?
How about a poop sandwich? You want that?
Go get a banana, and I just push play on the movie, okay? Okay, I'll
be right there. We're almost done. 2
so
minutes.
close. That was long.
2 minutes?
Can I have 5 minutes?
How about 2? 2 minutes.
Okay.
Deal.
Go on the couch. We'll be right out.
All right.
This is our house too.
So guys, can you we're about to wrap up. We have to go pick up our daughter, but can you guys tell us where people can find you, what you're promoting? Put all your plugs here.
All plugs. All right. So our website is rvfta.com. If anybody wants to kind of dig in and just see what we talk about, what we do. You can also, of course, listen to our podcast from rvfta.com. It's all there. And then we're in iTunes, Google Play, all those places.
You are everywhere.
At RV Family Travel Atlas.
And on Instagram, we changed to at Jeremy and Stephanie.
Yeah, why'd you do that real quick?
I think that we were going to start a YouTube talk show. We have our next book, See You at the Campground, coming out in a year. And I just think we're starting to look at us as overseeing a couple different brands.
Okay.
And we also had way too much coffee that morning and just took out
I
the
think
phones.
that, again, it's that we ended up talking a lot about writing, right? And some people name their Instagram account the name of their first big hit, right?
Right.
But then, like, what about your other things?
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's our podcast name. Right. But we also have a book that we already wrote. We've got another book
How do you
coming up.
pick one, right?
And
You're widening the brand.
Yeah.
Right. Why would I do the name of each of these individual things? It's really Stephanie and Jeremy.
It felt quite liberating, actually.
I bet.
I think it did. Yeah,
because
I
now
think
you have an umbrella,
thing.
right? We can put anything we want under this.
Anything we want. And I think that was important to me, again, breaking out of that feeling like everything is going to be what we've done already. We've got a million things that we can do together. over the decades to come. And
it's not always going to be RV family. I mean, we will be older one day and our kids will be off in college and have nothing to do with our travels and our adventures. And I think in some way subconsciously we were getting ready for that too, maybe.
So it'd be like in a cabin in the woods, Jeremy and Stephanie.
That's
exactly
fine. That's fine with me.
Writing spunny novels
something.
with a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had, I do the sort of, I turned 40 in January.
I heard. And then got the accolade of women under 40,
I
right?
did. I won 40 under 40 in our industry.
She was 40 under 40 out of everybody, the men and the women.
Well,
awesome.
So I did turn 40 and I did this sort of thing in my notebook where I was thinking about where I wanted to be when I was 50.
Yeah.
Right? Because of course I do shorter term stuff, but it really was like the beginning of this decade when I was thinking back to where I was at 30, and all that had happened in my 30s. I became a mom,
Yeah.
I built a business. I became a published author. And so I was like, where do I want to be when I'm 50? And I have to say that image of the desk, of a quiet spot with a writing desk.
Yeah.
It was so prevalent in that vision in my heart of my future. And when something really is screaming at you like that, you got to listen. Right. And so that's what I'm saying. At 50, apparently there's a really beautiful she shed.
All right. Waterfront, maybe.
Yeah, there's a beautiful she shed at 50.
I just want to write a children's book and have Jay illustrate it, but
All
we'll
right.
talk about that later.
Jeremy would write
fabulous
fantastic young.
together.
He would write fantastic young adult fiction. Like he's always had that sense of humor for decades. I've been telling him.
AKA he's very immature.
Yeah, he gets along with 12-year-olds so well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should put it out there into the world that we need to keep each other in check with these things because it's important we don't get lost into the black hole of business life. It's important to maintain.
Well, that's why I love these in-person ones too, because it's like suck me out of my podcast hole, like where we're just stuck in this room talking to no one. Well, this is completely
and it's been
amazing.
thank you guys it's been wonderful to kind of get to know you more as creatives, right? Because we give each other so much energy when we don't get lost in our own little
everyone
thing.
Listening to your show, you got to find ways to meet other people who are doing similar things.
Tribe,
and not necessarily your competition, but people are doing like the similar but different.
Well, that was the funniest thing because the first time we actually spoke about this, Stephanie was like, I would love to talk. No one has any idea how we even make money.
Nobody knows, right? I know.
Like such a funny thing.
One of our sponsors once asked us if we worked.
Do you work?
Like our sponsor didn't understand what we do.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, you're cutting us checks.
Yeah. Well, that's like, we get that at art shows too. Like they'll be like, so like, this is all you do?
This is what you do.
This is all I do.
Yeah.
It's like such a funny
thing.
So
it's very important to connect with people that understand what goes on in those home offices and behind the scenes to be able to project that easy breezy content, right? That everybody likes to consume. So, but it's been very nice to chat with you guys.
And find out we're like a mile away from each other too is icing on the cake.
And we're big fans of your show. We really are. So we love what you guys are doing. So we're listeners.
And we're going to get our butts in an RV at some point.
Let's do it. We'll go together.
I have to ask you. I have one more question. So I have to do our kitchen question. So if I dropped you back, we'll start with Stephanie in your childhood kitchen.
I can't wait to hear this.
What's the first thing that you think of?
Making bread.
Bread? Like old school churning butter and making
My
bread?
mother made our own homemade peanut butter. We had a kitchen garden outside. We used to go pick the vegetables for dinner to cook with dinner. It is something that for years I tried to replicate as a working mom, right? And I felt like I was such a failure as a mom for so many years because I was trying to do that scratch life.
Yeah.
It's like you were brought up Amish.
Yeah, it was interesting.
She still is.
We used to go to somebody's garage to get all of the bulk,
crazy
oats and everything. Like I lived in I went to health food stores before anybody knew what a health food store was. That was my childhood.
Commune life.
And I have to say that it took me years to be released of that idea that I had to do all of that, but I still do remember the joy of making bread. And I had my own little loaf. My mother would be making the bread for the week and making the bigger loaves, and I would have my own little loaf. So
awesome.
I still remember that.
All right, Jeremy.
We were poor, so it's breakfast for dinner. I just always remember my mother making pancakes for dinner.
Really?
Oh
That was all we had. Yeah, scarred me for life.
Oh my God, isn't that funny? I used to do that, but that was so exciting. My parents would make that the big deal.
Now it's exciting for our kids to have breakfast for dinner.
Now it's a choice, though. Then it was a necessity.
Yes, then it's like, this is literally all we have.
What is it?
Well, I guess we're done. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you
much.
guys.
Say bye-bye,
you.
Gina?
Judy, you want to say bye?
Let's go feed the kids.
Aw.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I want to travel the world.
I was not expecting you to go there.
I'm going to sing the entire thing. I'm
Is that a
going to get
song?
in an RV. No.
Oh, okay. Thought we actually had a real song you're basing this off of.
No, but I should write one.
Well, that was cool.
I know. I
Love
just like,
them.
I'm so jealous. I have so much jealousy happening. I
He's
love.
got a great beard.
Oh, well, I'm not jealous of his beard, but I'm jealous of traveling. I just like, now that they're doing the like, get on a plane, fly somewhere, rent an RV, and
That's
then
way
go
more
travel.
my style.
Yeah. Like, and I think the kids would freaking love it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But I don't know. There's something like old worldly about the two of them. I know I said that in my intro. They like have this like Emerson and Thoreau vibe of just being like those old school like writers that just want to like sit at a campfire and
They
just,
want to, but it was also like refreshing to hear how vulnerable they got. I think it takes a
on the
lot of-
business side. Yeah,
On the business side, I think it took a lot of courage for them to admit a lot of that stuff. That clearly was not probably where any of us thought this would go, but it's great to hear their honesty with that, because running a business is freaking hard and they're doing great, but it does take a huge amount of work.
Yeah, it does. And I also feel like
What do you feel like?
oh, shut up. It was interesting to see Steph kind of say, like, some of this is a lot, and I don't always get to enjoy my vacations, and sometimes it's, like, all-consuming, but they also get to pay their bills and travel the world. So it's, like, those constant, like, entrepreneurial things, right? Like, we're constantly weighing those two sides, and it's not always easy, but I do think we win in the end when we get to choose our work, right?
Was it this episode or another one that we were using the shit sandwich reference?
That was this one.
That was this
all,
one.
I'm so all about the shit sandwich.
We're so
like,
into shit sandwiches.
I really am. Like, I just feel like even with the doula work,
If you
like,
haven't read the book, you really have to.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
we'll,
Big Magic is so
yeah.
inspiring, and she's just so real. So I really like that. We're gonna have to get her on here someday. She's Jersey bred.
yeah,
Yeah.
there you go, Elizabeth.
Yeah, come on,
Little
Elizabeth.
Miss Gilbert, if you'd like to come on our
Yeah.
show.
I'm
Open
just
invite.
putting it out there. Open invite. If you just have a random
Little
day,
magic.
You're at the beach. Yeah. No, I think that the shit sandwich is such an important analogy, and if you don't know a lot about it, that's why you should read the book. But she just talks
Yes,
about.
That's why you should read
That's
the
the only
book.
reason to learn what a shit sandwich
Go
is.
to the shit sandwich chapter.
But even with like something you couldn't love more, like the doula work side of it, like the amount I sit on my website trying to like
Good God, yeah.
get all of this stuff, just I don't know, it never ends. Once it's perfect, a month later it's not perfect anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like we were alluding to in our conversation, it's like me with my art. I would love to think that my life consists of all my social media moments, but in reality, like I'm glued to my computer dealing with a lot of really boring admin stuff and like stare me. Is that a word? Stare me. Like Jeremy and Steph. That's like Brad and Angelina. Didn't they have like
Brangelina?
Brangelina?
Oh,
Yeah,
let's call you guys Stare Me. That's great. That's a great.
Stare me spoken. The RV today.
Oh,
Yes, Stare Me. So
man.
as Stare Me was saying, where was I going with that?
I don't have any idea, but that's a great place to
I like
end.
that.
That's a great place to end right there. Anyway, I mean, I hope you're totally inspired by this one. I just
Stare
feel
Me
like
Puglisi.
if this gets you through nothing more than realizing it's not that hard to rent a freaking RV, like that was the biggest thing for me. Like I didn't realize that you could just like do this and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And you have a free hotel on wheels. Well, not free. Sorry. You have a hotel on wheels. It's very not free. Totally not free.
Totally.
Opposite of free.
Unless you're like a really successful podcaster and they comp you.
Yeah, I mean, don't they just give you free RVs all the time, guys? You just like
Stare Me.
just
What's the deal?
Stare Me. Do they just throw RVs
Does
at you?
anyone actually listen to this part? Can you guys like tag us and let us know if anyone's actually even listening to this? I think
yeah,
we could just like speak jibber jabber, and I'm not sure if people would actually get to this part.
yeah.
So for those of you that are,
You've
Me
just
and
won
us.
$1 million.
yes, here's the secret code to unlock the secrets of the world.
Oh man! All right, guys. Sorry, we're delirious. I haven't slept in 4 days. It's
Yeah,
just
so
kind of
what's-
like
should we give some insight on what's been going on in our
Yeah,
lives?
I mean,
Like,
it's been
since no
a-
one's listening anyway, like who gives
sure.
a fuck, right?
Yeah, guys. I got caught. I mean,
So Friday
Friday.
afternoon, I'm driving my daughter back from school, and this is not funny in the slightest bit. I get a call from my brother that my dad had a heart attack, they think, and I race to the hospital where my dad was on like a stretcher in the ER, and it was really, really hard. And he got rushed to get an emergency stent put in his heart, which I think is now his second or third one. I'm not sure. And then, so that dealt with. And then my mom, as I've alluded to on the podcast, so it's no secret, she has like some mental illnesses and challenges, and she had to go to the hospital herself. So within an afternoon, I had both parents at the hospital. Then things sort of kind of calmed down slightly.
For like an hour.
For an hour or two. And then what? I went to actually, Summer had an asthma attack. Right?
The next night.
The next night.
Yeah.
And then go to sleep and wake. And Chelsea's like, "Oh, I'm driving to Boston right now. I have our friends."
Prequel, another one of our best friends. Hi, Dave and Jess. Congratulations. I had a baby the night before Jay's
Congratulations,
parents.
Dave and Jess Fowler.
Yes, baby Michael is here. And
MDF.
They had their baby the day before all of this happened. So we had one of our best friends have, baby, and then a heart attack, and his mom's in the hospital. And then,
side note here, Dave Fowler is one of the frontmen for one of our favorite bands who broke our heart when they broke up, Echo Movement.
I think God smokes weed.
Yeah, you got to look that up on Spotify. Amazing. They're awesome.
So good. But yeah, so they had their baby. We had a heart attack. Dave's mom got super mentally sick. Yeah, I'm publicish. And it's been a week now. So, and then, 1 a.m, I got a call that our podcast guest, Brian Bishop, who was on here about a month ago, his wife's water broke in Boston. So at 3 a.m, I
don't know what's public with that. So we'll just say maybe something happened, maybe something didn't. I don't know. Are we allowed to say?
They're Insta public about 5 minutes ago.
They were. Okay. Yeah. So they had a baby boy.
And Daniel Patrick. And he was born, but I was in Boston for about 36 hours. It was a very long birth. Heather crushed it, but it was hard work for everyone around. So I haven't slept in forever. It's great. I'm feeling like I'm super high on life and babies.
And I've been with the kids several days straight, which turns out I actually needed because I've been so overloaded with work that it was really great to redeem myself as a father, to be perfectly honest with you guys.
Yeah, but we totally neglected you guys. We didn't even post anything on Instagram.
Yeah.
It was a week off.
So for the one person that's listening to this part, that's what happened. And I also have to say publicly that Daniel Bishop is perhaps one of the few newborn babies that I'm actually jealous of. Like to have
coolest
parents
freaking
like Brian and Heather.
Parents ever.
Oh, what a lucky kid.
I mean, come on, baby Michael, too. We've got a lot of lucky babies
Michael,
being
too.
born.
Absolutely. I mean, he's going to crush it on the keyboard.
Oh, God, we have these babies that are just going to come out playing music and skateboarding. Like, how unfair. Man.
Our kids are pretty set on that path.
Oh, I know. But, selfish, but totally jealous. We've got a lot of lucky kids out there. So, yeah, baby bliss, a lot of family chaos. Yeah. But we're sorry we neglected you.
Not that sorry, but a little bit sorry.
Well, yeah.
It was nice to get a break. I love you guys, but it was nice. It was a nice needed break to put things in perspective, to shift our perceptions back to family and friends, and take my mind off the stresses of all the tasks that are required to make a podcast happen and life happen and business and work and art.
Yeah,
and blah blah blah.
But we've been rejuvenated. I feel like this is but we'll be we're gonna do some live videos. We're gonna update everyone, and I don't know. I hope you're still listening. Anyway.
Assuming no one's listening, we could just keep talking and
yeah, except
we won't though.
I've got some shit
Chelsea
to do.
Has somewhere to go. Anyway, peace and love to you guys.
Love y'all. Thanks, guys. We hope you loved that episode. If you did love it and could give us some love on iTunes, that would be amazing. You can leave a review and we will give you a shout out at some point on this podcast.
Also, if you guys can follow us on social media, we would love to hear from you. We are on pretty much every social media platform at Shifting Perceptions Podcast, which is the same as our website, shiftingperceptionspodcast.com. We look and reply to all comments, so please share with your friends, tag us. We appreciate all the love.
And don't forget that all of our guests also see all these comments, so I'm sure if you want to just have a space you can reach out, these are the places to do it. We also want to give some love to our amazing photographer that has done all of our photos so far.
Kevin Rigby.
His website is wavelightstudio.com.
And also our really good friend John Harvey, who did the music for our podcast. You could find him at Instagram at Harvey Wallbanger. So that's our little rolling credits. We will be back next week.